Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar on Maximising the Potential with Microsoft 365. My name is Andrew, and I'm part of the Modern Workplace team here at Ingram, and I'm joined today by some great guest speakers, including Sean from Microsoft, who will be leading the conversation around Microsoft 365, Ian from Skykick, who will be speaking about accelerating your 365 practices using Skykick, and we also have Elliot from GCITS, who will be sharing his insights as to what has worked for him and how they adopted Microsoft 365 as part of their solution. In today's webinar, we're going to cover a few key points. So we'll have a look at Microsoft 365, what it is and how it differs from Office 365, the opportunity for you guys as partners and trusted advisors, how to create a cloud bundle and go to market with it, and the SMB opportunity with Skykick. And finally, we'll cover the incentives and offers that Ingram is running with Microsoft 365 and how you can take advantage of them. Now, before we jump into it, Ingram is here to help build your Microsoft 365 practice. We have a dedicated team for Microsoft 365, including myself and CJ, who can work with you to get you and your sales team up to scratch on the product and help put together a plan of attack to go to market with your customers. We run webinars such as this one and also hold in-person workshops to help you get ahead of the curve and stay ahead of your competition. If you'd like to take advantage of any of the points on the screen, let me know. Or if there's something on there that's something that's not on there that you'd like to do, let us know. Reach out to CJ or myself. Now I'll hand over the reins to Sean from Microsoft, and he'll take you through Microsoft 365.
Hi, firstly, thanks a lot for the introduction there, Andrew. We do have a ton of information and some great insights from a few individuals at a partner level that will sort of be spending some time asking how they've built their business around M365 and where Skykick can turn what you're currently doing today into a more modern bundled practice with some of their offers and solutions that they're already offering today in market. I guess what I will cover, as Andrew noted, was basically where we are today, why M365 has a place in IT businesses today, especially for partners, understanding where businesses have come from an Office 365 to an M365 perspective, and ultimately why you should possibly consider building out services, not just from an Office 365 perspective, but now around security and device management, which obviously M365 is predominantly focused on. Now, to start, this is an interesting quote, and Ian and I were actually having a chat about this last week, and he said, if there's a number of partners on this call that have probably listened into a few IT talks, this was actually a quote that a certain individual mentioned probably about 10 years ago around looking where the puck is going as opposed to where it currently is, and we make the analogy from ice skating to Microsoft 365. And you could say it could be dubious, but we think that it's quite relevant. With M365, we see a number of partners growing year on year and doubling their revenue purely because of the services that M365 as a product can offer. So if we look at some of the insights around why it is important for partners to possibly consider this move, these are some of the statistics that should maybe highlight why this is quite a important point for you guys and where there's an opportunity. So 60% of businesses don't have resources to implement new technologies and applications today. So what does that mean? Where's the opportunities for you as a partner? Well, it basically suggests that customers may have shadow IT in their businesses today, but they don't necessarily have the resources or the skills to actually roll out services that M365 has. In addition to that, customers suggest that they'd rather be doing business with one vendor in particular, or one point of contact, using one piece of software to basically solve a number of their issues they're struggling with today. Interestingly, 37% of businesses are adapted to the cloud, but we see this growth increasing by 2020. Where 78% will be fully cloud operational, which is, again, how do you look at your current base of customers and decide to move them towards cloud-specific services? Now, in addition to that, how do you go from possibly servicing your current customers, maybe with Office 365 or on-prem solutions, to a more modern way of operating? So I guess understanding what your current customer base is using is the first step to making that shift, or how you go into your customers and open up their, I guess, current way of thinking around IT to the way you should be operating. And so if we look at the current state of play, we have customers that are using Windows 8. We have a ton of customers on Windows 7. We have many customers still on old operating systems that 70% of businesses today aren't aware of what end of support is, or even when it's occurring. So there's a great inflection point for you as a partner to call up your customers and prospect that existing base where they might not be aware of what end of support is, and then begin that conversation around, do you have PCs that are going end of life? Do you have a ton of employees that are using mobile devices? Is there an overarching strategy that we could possibly align our services with your maybe dated technology with? In addition to the prior point I made around multiple vendors being in a company and a company then having a large cost associated to a number of technologies in their business, that's pretty true among customers today who feel as though they need antivirus, they need a number of collaboration platforms to solve for issues that they have, versus what M365 looks to solve for is being that one point of, I guess, IT, which can address device management, ongoing security issues around breach preparedness, compliance, if you have industries which your customers need to abide by, and then how you actually get to that cloud is something that we'll touch on with Skykick and their solutions. So that's sort of what the current IT environment looks like. In order to move forward around what the product is, we sort of have to step back a bit to understand why M365 had a place in the first place. So for those on the call, a number of you are already transacting M365 today. We know that based on the volume of business you're doing with your customers. Some of you are transacting sort of at a license level, and some are building services out which don't even mention M365 at all when you're offering sort of a monthly bill to your customers, which could be offering services associated to compliance, mobile device management, encryption, things like that. And those are the partners which we find are most successful in delivering solutions to the end customer. The ones that don't actually mention product. And that's important because at the end of the day, what Microsoft has released is a product which looks to empower individuals, safeguard data and the business that they have built in the first place, and simplifying the whole IT process in its entirety. So that's what M365 has been built for those sort of four main pillars: achieving more with your team, remote working or always being secure, and then ultimately having a platform which is more simple than a number of others. So if we look at what's actually within M365 Business, business is obviously being one or the earlier, the cheapest of the M365 SKUs. It goes right up to E5 and starts with M365 Business. So if you look what business looks to solve for, it's designed specifically for the SMB customer. So any customer that has more than 300 users, it wouldn't be suited for it, because that's the maximum amount of individuals that can be using it in one instance. So in some instances we have 1,000 individuals in a business. 300 want to use M365 Business, 300 might want to use E5, and the rest could be F1 or another type of license. But if we specifically focus on M365 Business, understanding the cost associated to the value or the features that you're getting from it are as follows. So if we look at third-party solutions, and this is a slide which resonates with a number of, I guess, partners, we understand that you work with other vendors, and we completely appreciate that. But if we look at what you possibly, what your customer could be possibly paying for every month with those third-party solutions, it could total to around $100. And with M365 Business, you get all of that, if not more, and some unique features associated to Microsoft product, but for that is $20 US, so it's about $28 Australian. So and customers like, it's too good to be true. They come back with sort of objections around, I want data on-prem and I want some in the cloud. I'm happy with my Windows 7. I don't want to upgrade. There's a ton of objections, which we have a lot of resources that you can reference. But for the most part, what you're getting at the price you're getting is something Microsoft only in the last 2 years since the product has gone GA has got far more features associated to it when it first came out. So we've listened to the feedback that as partners you provided us. One of the first ones was around hybrid. We understood there wasn't much of a story that we were taking to our customers around why you should move fully to the cloud. We listened to you and we've sort of included that. Additionally, there was, conversations around voice. How does an SMB business have that with telephony associated to that? That could be something in the next financial year that Microsoft release. But there's a ton of goodness in this product which previously Office 365 didn't offer. So if you break it down even more, how do you go about positioning it from an objection? Say, I don't know the difference between Office 365 and M365. Why would I be paying X amount more per month? So if we look at what Office 365 is, you've obviously got your Office applications, then you've got your online services, and these are all great. And then there's aspects of advanced services which, like archiving, which are core to Office 365. The next evolution or the next addition to how M365 came in was customers and compliance and fines associated to SMBs are becoming stricter, larger, and with 50% of SMB businesses experiencing a breach at some point in their business cycle, and 20% of those going out of business, specifically in Australia within 6 months, Microsoft clearly saw an opportunity globally to address that advanced security part of an offering that we didn't have in place before. That a lot of customers weren't really willing to go from an Office 365 straight to to an E3 or E5 license because of the price jump. So how do we meet in the middle? We've got really great features around Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, MFA, and BitLocker, which weren't previously in a number of the Office 365 features. And then if we turn to device management, what's within device management, which is really cool? We've got a ton of employees now on the go. How do their devices be consistently, group policied and managed and secure? How does data avoid being leaking within an individual's device? These are some features which have just obviously come out with M365 Business, which now you can turn into additional services that you can be billing your customers every month on. So if we look at differentiating between Office 365 Business Premium straight up to the expensive E5 SKU, the arrow pointing from top to bottom is obviously what separates the Office compared to the M365 SKUs. We're not going to go too deeply into that, but the critical thing that you probably want to be thinking about is what skills do I have in-house today, which we could be applying through M365. And that's something that Elliot will talk to with GCITS around how do you avoid reinventing the wheel with services you already offer today, which align perfectly to M365. So this is just a view on costings, features associated to M365, and where business fits into that. So the conversation that we have to have, we've been having the last sort of 2 years, especially around the way that CSP works, is the partners which are bringing in the most revenue are not associated to the actual license itself. The revenue that's coming is coming from the services that they're delivering every month with their end customer. So if we look at the way that partners are working today, we definitely have a number of partners, a large majority of our channel, that are definitely still working in that product resale world. And we think that's totally understandable. In fact, that's how you generally start, a lot of businesses through that way of operating. Then the shift to that project services, the revenue, cloud revenue associated to that, obviously looks to double when you associate cloud or services to that initial license. And customers ad hoc ask for certain, I want to get to the cloud. I want some of my data hosted in Azure. How do I get my individuals and my employees in my organization operating more efficiently? Moving mailboxes to Exchange, those type of things to get your initial users to the cloud is obviously the first thing. But then how do you turn that initial opportunity that you might have had with a customer into an ongoing monthly service. And these are obviously the revenue streams which Microsoft talk to as a way of, encouraging partners to understand that, the puck was once in the product world, a very transactional way of operating. A lot of businesses are surviving and survived on that margin alone that, Microsoft and or the disti, indirect provider would have passed down. Nowadays, the partners which are going above and beyond are the ones that are delivering or building IP which sit on top of Microsoft 365. And we'll talk to a bit about that after. I sort of touched on this before, but for every $1 of Microsoft revenue that you drive from a resell, there's $10 of partner opportunity associated to you charging that to the end customer. So what's that saying? It's saying that, with Office 365, you were limited to a number of features around, Office, around Exchange, Skype for Business, SharePoint, and now with M365, you've got endless amount of features which you can offer now as a service of your own that work in parallel to that product, which is amazing. So what is possible with M365? Well, the way that we're approaching it now is through teamwork and security. How do you build a practice around services? You're probably offering around Office 365 today without going and hiring a bunch of people. And how do you start that process? So here's quite an analogy which resonates in terms of the way that business models are now changing. They're changing from that, initial CapEx purchase of a license, of a device, of content, to now a monthly subscription. And, the chink in your armor as a partner is you have the advantage of offering monthly value-added services that possibly your customers might not have seen before. But the second those value-added services stop, that customer has the opportunity to move to another partner. They don't have to be as loyal as they once were based on the long-term contracts that might have been in place. And we see that with things like Netflix, Spotify, Apple Music, the shift from Office licenses to Office 365, now M365. Personally, I use, a number of music subscriptions. If that music isn't available on that subscription, based on the exclusivity that they might have, I can quite easily change and cancel that subscription. The same applies, to Netflix. If content is coming out there, you can jump from one to another. So that same applies to partners as well. How do you take that model and apply it to teamwork as a specific sales play within Microsoft 365? Well, largely, the statistics which are coming out are pretty strong insofar as the type of workforce which is now emerging is extremely mobile. They're full of millennials, and the growth of users on cloud are increasing day to day. That is largely in conjunction with the amount of collaboration that's going on. So how do you offer services specific to teamwork, which you might not have thought of today? This is essentially a bit of a roadmap as to how you can think about building out those services with M365 that initially Office 365 might not have offered. If we look at the older approach of having that initial email migration service offered to your customer, and then deploying Office, having that help desk charging a fixed rate per month, being a small amount, and then making the money on the product resale. Now you've got the shift to a business premium. You can offer a bit more around change management, establishing meeting ownership, and I guess engagement around the product. And then obviously the shift to a consumption model with Microsoft, and the way that partners are reimbursed can be based on partner of record and the amount of a customer's product being used versus it just being sold. And so obviously we look at the shift from stage 1 to stage 2, the dollar value that increases with additional services. And then once we move to M365 Business, we've now got a bunch of cooler services which possibly customers are asking for. Now, this is something, Elliot can confirm with me. If this process was as linear and the trajectory was as clear from Office 365 to M365, but it's clear that the dollar value associated and that the profit associated to a partner increases considerably over time with M365. And how do you do that? Well, there are a bunch of things inside teamwork. We look at standardizing collaboration on teams within users. having an individual championing that, and having maybe a change management service in a partner as a fixed monthly cost to ensure that users are really getting around the Teams platform. Then you've got readiness things inside Teams, which also allow you to understand a bit more about what the AI that sits behind Teams and Microsoft Stream can offer for your customers. How are they using that? Could be for for sporting clubs, things like that. And then you've got new services associated to moving intranet to SharePoint and online, and how you can customize that with individual IP. I guess that also applies to security. And security is obviously we're finding, I guess, the new currency, especially with data. And individuals that have found success in that within our partner channel has been GCITS. So we've got Elliot here, who we'd love you to talk around what that journey has been like over the last 2 years. Was it as straightforward as that slide that Microsoft obviously talks to? And I'd love to ask you a bit more about maybe what you'd recommend partners doing today who maybe aren't servicing their customers with M365, how they can make that shift. So Elliot, welcome. Thanks for coming.
Hi, yes, thank you for having me. So yeah, our journey in moving to, primarily selling Microsoft 365 Business, it began probably 2 years ago when we started doing this program called EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System Program. Essentially, it's a business coach that will help you run through your business and say, in a perfect world, what would things look like? How would they run? And we're a relatively typical MSP. We've got we're a small MSP. We have about 8 people. At the time, we had 6, and we came up with a set of solutions, or a stack that would be ideal for us. So what would the ideal Office 365 license be? What would the ideal backup license be? And if in a perfect world, all of our customers would be on this stack, and we wouldn't have a bunch of ad hoc work, we wouldn't have a bunch of noisy customers that pestered us and things like that. So we came up with this ideal stack, and we knew that the way to get there was through automation and scripting things and making sure all of our customers were set up the same way every time. And along this process, a couple of months in, we discovered that as we're automating things and running scripts across our customers, we discovered that a lot of our customers actually had breaches. We wrote this script that went through the audit logs of all our customers, and it pulled out the login locations or the login IPs that the customers were logging in from, and it ran it through an IP locator API. And we found in about 10% of our customers, we had logins from Nigeria, we had logins from China, we had logins from Russia, all these Eastern European countries, all these African countries. And then we realized we've got a really big problem on our hands. We've got a massive security issue that a lot of our customers don't even know about. So the first thing that we had to do within 3 months of starting this program was deal with cleaning up after about 30 instances of breaches. And so we pivoted a bit, and we went from focusing on getting everybody on Office 365 to looking at the security aspects of Microsoft 365 Business and E3 at the time. And so we changed from focusing on getting everything standardized to focusing on security. And this was coupled with the introduction of the notifiable data breach scheme in Australia. And it came at a really bad time for a lot of our customers. It was back in, say, February, I think, last year, that if you have these breaches and you don't handle them correctly, then you're up for potentially business-ending fines. And these are business-ending fines for something that is alarmingly commonplace. So we decided that we're going to focus 100% on security. We're not going to compromise on putting in Office 365 licenses anymore. We're not going to listen to the customer when they're trying to save money. We're just going to insist on Microsoft 365 Business at a minimum, and we're going to insist on these tools in the managed service stack. We're going to insist on this backup, and it's just going to be a set monthly fee per month. It's going to be a bundled fee of our managed services, Microsoft 365, and some of our own IP. And we did that, and the price was a massive increase for a lot of our customers. It went from, I think it went from about $50 per user per month including like a very basic Office 365 license for some customers, to a minimum of 165 per user per month. And we took this to our customer base and we said, this is the direction we're going. The landscape has changed. Security is very important. This is our solution, this bundled GCITS security pack with our managed services. And you can sort of take it or leave it, but we said it in a bit of a nicer way. And we lost a lot less customers than we thought. So we did lose a few, and we knew that we would, but the revenue that we gained from taking on like re-rating the existing customers more than made up for the amount that we lost. I think we lost about 1 in 5 customers during this transition, and we've taken on a lot more security-focused customers in the transition. And the upside of that has been is we're selling a lot more high margin, high revenue services, and we're not seeing anywhere near the same number of breaches. We haven't seen any breaches so far, touch wood, in any of our security pack customers. And we have a much quieter service desk. I remember before we started this process, we had a bunch of ad hoc work. I think 35% of our margin was ad hoc work. It's now down to 35% of our revenue was ad hoc work. It's now 8% of our revenue. And on a Friday afternoon, our support desk, which used to be above 100, like our support ticket count was above 100 and 130 tickets on a Friday afternoon. Now that everything's standardized, we're running everything on this same consistent stack with Microsoft 365 Business. We finished with about 9 tickets on a Friday afternoon, and it's it's great. So yeah, I recommend it. I recommend bundling everything into a consistent stack using Microsoft 365 Business, implementing all the security features like multi-factor authentication, data loss prevention, pivoting your service around and communicating your service around security, and just start with a few customers.
Elliot, that's the story which may resonate with a few partners who are also doing that, whether bundling or offering M365 to their end customer. But you took a very specific stance on security. In fact, you took a risk around possibly losing a whole bunch of your customers, which you clearly said you did, but the benefit outweighed the negative. So I guess for partners that are maybe transacting or offering services specific to Office 365, how would you recommend they begin to strategize that, maybe plan for FY20? What would be those initial things that you would whiteboard from a top 3 priorities to move or avoid reinventing the wheel, so to speak, from an Office 365 perspective to an M365? What are the closest, what are the 2 or 3 closest things that both products have that you can begin to offer?
Yeah, so you don't necessarily need to be as strict as we were. We were pretty much take it or leave it on our offering. I think because we were so concerned about the security aspect and we believed so much that they needed to have this license, or we didn't want to be associated with the risk of managing a non-secure customer. But what really helped us was identifying a breach in the customer before we went and pitched them a bigger license. So our script, it's on our website. You can check it out. It just runs across all of your customers, and it will pull the login locations, and it will say whether your customers are logging in from unexpected countries. And you can also, there's also scripts there that check for unexpected forwards on mailboxes and inbox rules and things like that. So we went to the customers that we detected breaches in first, and they were the easier sells. And then once you've got the confidence of deploying the software and setting up data loss prevention and multi-factor authentication across everybody, and the ATP policies and things like that, then you're more comfortable to push this to the rest of your customer base. But you don't necessarily have to be like, take this or you're not our customer anymore. That's just the way that we did it. So you don't have to worry about losing all your customers. It's just that we took a pretty hardline approach because we really believed that was the way to go.
Yeah, that's great. And I think one thing which we get a ton of feedback on is, how do you justify to your end customers the price increase? So you mentioned that there was almost a double the doubling of to a customer every month in their end bill. I mean, obviously security is important, but for SMBs, they're far more price conscientious for the most part than enterprise customers. How do you have that conversation with them?
Yeah, it really depends on the end customer. We were surprised by that because we thought it would be industry specific, that like certain customers in certain industries would be more likely to take up the security focused service, but it was the end customer and how seriously they took the security aspect. But we went into every engagement just focusing on security, saying we've got the notifiable data breach now, and if you don't comply with these regulations, if you do get a breach, then there's big fines for you as a director and for the company. And we've also got this rate of breaches that we're discovering, and we want to give you the opportunity to upgrade your security. So yeah, we went with a security focused mindset going in, and a security focused message.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Elliot, for that insight. We obviously work with a number of partners like you. You're based in the Gold Coast, so it just shows that size isn't everything. You guys are definitely punching above your weight. And if you have any questions for us or to Elliot, feel free to reach out. I'm sure you're more than happy to work with or answer any questions around how you made that possible. We do have a end of support milestone coming up, which a number of partners are leveraging, which we'll talk to at the end. But again, Elliot, thank you for your involvement. I will now pass on to Ian, who will talk to where Skykick fits into this conversation. So thank you, Elliot.
No worries. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant. That was really interesting, Elliot. And thanks, Sean. So just by way of introduction, Ian Medcalf. So I've been with Skykick for, I guess, just over 4 years now, leading the business on this side of the world. Prior to joining Skykick, I did spend 5 years at Microsoft Australia. So pretty familiar with obviously the Microsoft side of things, but also the channel. So today I'm just going to really build, I guess, on top of what Sean was saying around attaching the additional services to the 365 licensing. So not only just the services aligned to the product features within M365, but what are the additional things you can think about as you move from project services into becoming a managed service player, and then differentiating within your data market. So with that, I'll give you a quick background just in terms of Skykick, as well as just our technologies that we bring to market. So I'm just checking the slides are a little bit out of order, but just in terms of context to Skykick, I guess we've been around for 8 or 9 years, well and truly out of the startup phase. In fact, this phase of the business, we are scaling up quite significantly globally in a number of areas, including investing in particular markets. Australia, we've got over 8 people locally now, as well as a dedicated support team based out of Seattle. We are 100% through partner, so we don't sell direct, we only sell through the channel, and obviously through Ingram Micro's marketplace, or in the traditional sense through Ingram. Within the product or solution set that we have today, is we're founded around migration automation. So that's really about the email migration into Office 365, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But really the intent there is to automate as much as possible of the migration process, but also reducing as much risk as possible. The second one, which we were one of the first vendors to market with, is backup for Office 365. And today, we've got a fully fledged product across Exchange, SharePoint, OneDrive, Groups, and Teams. And I'll talk a little bit to that as well. The third solution in the platform is our cloud management product. This is for a set of tools to help partners manage multiple clouds, under multiple customers simultaneously. So that particular product has been beta for a while, and we'll see some announcements around that in the coming months as well. So just clicking through to the next slide, I guess, while I think of those three, solutions that SkyKick offers, those of you that are familiar with it do know that, some of the, I guess, the platform that underpins that is really around not just the product, but really looking at how we can help around the areas of customer acquisition, so helping you sell more, helping you around your profitability, your go-to-market, your operations, etc. So going through to migrations, I'm going to click through to a couple of slides here. So when I talk about migration automation, effectively, our migration automation technology is, we're always striving to automate as much as possible and to reduce as much risk as possible. So for those of you that are not familiar with SkyKick's migration tools, if we look at a typical S&B migration project, say a 25, 30 seat email migration, that would typically take a partner about 40 hours of labor. With SkyKick's full migration suite, we'll automate up to 90% and sometimes over 90% of that labor time. So what would typically take 40 hours of labor is now reduced to 4 hours. But importantly, we're reducing a lot of the risk. So, we do a full discovery prior to the migration. That's all free for partners to use. Really intended around automating as much as possible. So how we do it, there's 4 key components. As I mentioned, there's a migration planner that's all free to use. You can use that to discover the customer's source environment and actually plan the project prior to actually winning the business. Our migration sync technology, it's all built in Microsoft Azure. We actually use the local Australian data centers, and effectively all we're doing is copying the data from the source environment into Office 365. So there's no risk of losing data because we're just moving data. But I guess the other important part of that is because we're copying the data, there's no downtime for the end users. The third component is a little application that gets deployed on the end user PCs. The Outlook Assistant does 4 things. So it will scan for hot fixes, automatically apply them. It looks for service packs and needs remediation, creates the Outlook profile, and actually connects to Office 365. And then we've got a management portal as well. So for those of you that aren't familiar with our migration automation, certainly reach out to the Ingram team. They'd be more than happy to arrange a demo of the product. And you'll see how much value there is in terms of the actual planning phase, but then also how the automation kicks in. So I'm going to whip through the rest pretty quickly because I do want to get to spend a bit of time on packaging up solutions. So, as I mentioned, we do have a cloud backup product as well. I won't talk to the market opportunity, but I'll talk to a couple of key points around SkyKick's backup. One is that we have a very simple pricing model. So it's just a straightforward per user. So on the Exchange side, mailbox, shared mailbox or public folder. And then on the SharePoint side, activated user, very simple pricing model with no extra costs for additional storage or additional snapshots, etc. So a very simple pricing model. Again, the Ingram team can take you through that. Up to 6 snapshots a day, unlimited storage, and up to unlimited retention. We have quite deliberately chosen to run our backups into Microsoft Azure. As I said, there's no additional cost there for storage. and we do again default to the Australian data centers as well. So you can choose to other locations around the world, but the default is Australia. What's really important about that is it's cloud-to-cloud backup. So not only are we not bringing data back across the network, but importantly, we're actually backing up within that same data center from Office 365 to Azure, and therefore we can get up to 6 snapshots a day. So it's a highly efficient backup process. When you do have the SharePoint side of the backup enabled, you do get OneDrive for Business free for those particular users. And when you've got Exchange and SharePoint, you get groups and teams as well. So again, it's a lot more comprehensive than that. I do encourage you to reach out to your Ingram team should you want to know more from a feature perspective. But really what I wanted to talk about today is looking at bundling up the offering. So, certainly Elliot has spoken quite aspirationally around how they've come along a 2-year journey to bundle up a go-to-market. I think for a lot of partners that are still transacting Office 365, kind of doing the project services and looking at how they build relevant managed services around Office 365, I'll talk to just a very basic thought around getting started. So up on the screen is a US partner, CDW, and this is a very basic offering that they have around Skykick and Office 365. This particular example is Business Premium, but they do have for the other M365 offerings as well. Effectively, what they're doing is instead of charging a license cost and then a migration on top of that, plus backup, managed services, support, etc., they package it all into a single per user offering. In this particular example, it's $11.88 per user per month, and that includes everything from the support, the Office 365 SKU, but what they've also done is they've amortized out the cost of the migration as well, and they actually offer their customers free migration. So what it really allows them to do is provide the most value up front, but also they better able to differentiate the offering to the customer as well. So clicking through to the next slide, I'll jump over that one. It's just our standard pricing. What I wanted to go through is just an example of a pricing model when you think about packaging up Skykick around Office 365. Now, obviously, there's tremendous value within M365. There's tremendous value to add additional services on. This example is just stripping it down to the Skykick component, but I think that will give you a good sense in terms of where the incremental revenues align to the licensing. So this is, I'll go reasonably slowly on this build, just make sure that you are fully across what I'm presenting here. But effectively what we're saying is if we looked at a single user within your customer base, and we said 50% of your users are using M365 Business today, and the other half of the users are using Office 365 Business Essentials. So, the standard sort of RFP on Essentials is $84 a year, and M365 Business is $337. So if we take that blended 50-50, we can say that average user is giving you $210 of annual recurring revenue. Now, when we look at the generous sort of 15% plus profit margins that you get around the Office 365 licensing, and we look at that over a 5-year period on that $210 of recurring revenue, what we know is your gross margin for that 5-year term of that particular user across those blended SKUs is $158. Now, when you look at the cost of getting the customer into 365, if you use just the basic data-only tool, by the way, Skykick does offer a data-only migration tool as well. It's a bit less than that, but if we said it was $15 on average, and then the average labor component to move that user in 365 is $75. Your total cost of getting that user there is $90. So when you look at, offering a free migration, your net margins over a 5-year period are already quite slim. So, even if you're getting your 15% margin on the licensing, you'd be doing pretty well to get away with $68 profit for that user over a 5-year term. Now, on the right-hand side, as I said before, just looking at a strip back bundle, obviously, encourage you to, build it out further, to some of the key points Sean and Elliot spoke about. But if we just look at offering free migration and backup along with your standard support plus the licensing, I'll show you what that looks like. So from a top line revenue perspective, if we said that again, half your customers, used Exchange only backup, and the other half used Exchange and SharePoint. When we look at the included margin on top of that blended backup user, plus the $210 Office 365 recurring revenue, your top line revenue now increases from $210 to $282. But what's interesting within that is the incremental margin you're getting on the backup component. So, as we said previously, 15% margin in the Office 365, you're looking at about $158 a year over a 5-year term. With the backup, that increases to $230 over 5 years. Now, as I said before, if we look at the CDW example, and we look at, when Sean was talking about, project services, managed services, and then building IP, part of that IP is how you go out to market, how you differentiate your offering to your customer from your competitor. So in the CDW example, what we're seeing is they're giving away the free migration. So when we look at Skykick, when your customer commits to just a year upfront of Exchange backup through Ingram Micro, or a year of Exchange and SharePoint backup, we actually give you the full suite of migration tools at no cost. So when you take that into account, there's no cost to the migration tools. And on top of that, we're achieving over 90% automation. But if we said it was, conservatively 80%, your total cost of getting that user into Office 365 is now reduced down to $15. So when you look at the 5-year net margin for that particular customer, through reducing the cost of getting the customer into Office 365 through the Skykick bundling, your profitability now increases from $68 over a 5-year term to $215. So in the most basic form of leveraging Skykick's bundled offerings of free migration with backup, you're looking at growing your revenue from 3 to 5x in that most basic form. Now, obviously, as we've heard, continuously through this presentation, there's a lot more incremental value you can build on top of that. So really, that was the important point that I just wanted to land with you in this sort of more tangible financial model of where you guys can quite quickly start getting started into your managed services play around 365 with something simple like cloud backup, but then also how you differentiate through being able to offer free migration to your customers, so which obviously increases your sales velocity as well. So I'm not going to talk to these. I'm sure the slides will get shared out with you as well. We do get a lot of feedback from partners globally around how they go out to market. So there's some best practice things around sales and marketing. And then I guess just wanted to touch on the fact that if you're on Office 365 yourselves today and you got Microsoft Action Pack or Gold competency or Silver competency, you are eligible to get free backup through Skykick using your Azure IUR. So really encourage you to do that. And then just reach out to your Ingram, account manager or sales rep, and they'd be more than happy to, organize sort of more product specific webinars, etc. So just in wrapping up, do think about how you can get started in the certainly in the packaging up and the differentiation and MSP, and certainly the team here at Skyclick are here to help you along that journey. So that's it from my side, and I'll hand back to Andrew.
Great. First of all, thank you, Sean, Elliot, and Ian for your insights. This webinar was in high demand, so I'm sure a lot of partners have learned a lot today, and you've really helped them out. So thank you again.
No worries.
No worries.
So now, as we're coming up to the end of financial year, we do have a few offers at the moment around Microsoft 365. First off, we have $10 per seat for every Microsoft 365 license ordered. This is capped to the first 50 seats that you sign up. This includes upgrading from Office 365 or moving from another provider, as well as brand new orders. So take advantage of that one. That's till the end of June. In addition to that, make sure you're a part of the Cloud Movers program. If you're not part of it, essentially you get points for every sale you make across Microsoft CSP. And then at the end of that program, you can convert those points into cash. And then also our top 4 partners in this program can win a luxury driving experience in Sunshine Coast, driving around a supercar, which is awesome. Now, if you're brand new to Microsoft 365, check out our free courses on the Teachable site. There are a few introductory courses ran by Robert Crane, and he takes you through step by step through the product, helping you kind of understand how to use it. We also have trials on our website if you want to have a play around with it too. If you're after a course in particular, let us know and we'll see if we'll put one together for you as well. So thank you everyone for joining us today again. The webinar was recorded, so we will send it to you at the end. And we also have a couple of minutes for questions. So shoot your questions through, and Elliot, Ian, Sean, and myself can help you out.
If there are no questions at the moment, as you think about possibly your questions you could ask, one of the things that we jumped over was end of support. There's a bunch of your customers out there that are running on Windows 7 at the moment. A lot of them don't realize, firstly, when end of support's occurring. So that's a great sort of entry point for you to reopen that conversation if they either have an old device, if they have, if they've had a breach of sorts. So that's sort of one of the conversations that we're working with our customers locally on, in understanding you definitely have customers on old operating systems. Just having that conversation with them today, if not already, is something we'd recommend. The second thing that Elliot mentioned was the notifiable data breach scheme. A lot of customers don't realize they have an obligation to their customers if something were to happen, i.e. a breach or data leak. So it's in your interest to, as a trusted advisor, reach out and let them know that this is something they should be following. It's bi-directional, and what that means is if they hadn't had something in place to their customers, and their customers don't have something in place to notify them if a breach had occurred, and Elliot can build on this if you want to, then there are dual fines in place for those businesses, both at a partner level as your liability that you're taking on, but then also at a customer level to their customers. So we recommend you reach out to say, did you know about X, Y, and Z? These are the reasons associated to why you should look at maybe building out some sort of strategy with either a compliance element or a security element. And within that, obviously, end of support is quite topical because it's a great moment in time for you to reach out to say, look, you might have devices coming up for refresh. Now couldn't be a better time for you to probably get more modern. So that's, I guess, something we recommend. Just to add there. If there aren't any questions.
We do have a couple of questions.
Great. Sure.
So first off for you, Sean, just a quick one. William asks, where did the $20 figure come from? And that might be in regards to the Microsoft 365 pricing.
Yes, so sorry, I think I clarified that, but I think the $20 is actually a US pricing. So that's It's approximately $28.95 to my knowledge for an M365 business license if you were to sell it to your customer. So it should be, that's something we can correct when we sell it or we send it out to you guys. It should be higher than that.
Awesome. And then a question for yourself, Ian. Patrick asks, so being in the same data center for backup doesn't mitigate geographical issues. Are there options to mitigate this?
There certainly are. So we do default to Australia. Obviously, it gains the greatest efficiency, but if you are worried about sort of geo redundancy within the provisioning of the backup, you can choose any data center, any Azure data center around the world. There's no additional cost for that. So yes, you can mitigate geo redundancy as well.
Great. And we also have another question from Neil. So he asks, how about migrating out of the Telstra Office 365 environment to Ingram Micro CSP? Can Skykick be used for this? Now, I believe that Skykick can do tenant-to-tenant migrations. However, in this case, you'd probably just delegate Ingram as a CSP provider and take over that way, correct?
That is from the Skykick side, answered perfectly. Absolutely, if there's a merger or an acquisition, you need to do a tenant-to-tenant migration. We do those, but yeah, my understanding is Telstra is on CSP, so it's just a CSP-related move and not a full migration.
Yeah, and that's something we've done before. So if you have an opportunity like that, let us know and we'll take you through it. Now we have a question for you, Sean, from James. He's asked, any info relating to security done by Microsoft using AI and other security brands like Deep Instinct?
What was the last part of that question?
So any info relating to security done by Microsoft using AI. And I guess if you know anything about other brands such as Deep Instinct.
Yeah, there's a bunch of material you've got my email, so I can grab it off Andrew, and I can send you some information around the security graph specific to AI, and things around efficiency, optimizing operations, and where security fits into that. So we can definitely provide you some data around that if that's what you're after.
And then on the E5, the Microsoft 365 E5 SKU, AI comes into play with Windows Defender a lot, and it's all about isolating computers off the network and stuff like that. It's really cool stuff.
Yeah.
So we have a question from Nick. If a business gets an IT breach, can they legally hold the MSP responsible, or is the business always the final responsible?
Is the partner going to be held?
Yeah, I think it's a case-by-case thing. It depends on the contracts you have with the customer. But our understanding is that most of the time the MSP is not responsible. It's the notifiable data breach laws applied to the directors of the company, not to the MSP. But yeah, right. It's probably best talking with a lawyer.
Yeah. I've also seen partners approach customers and say, this is what our solution is. This is the security offering that we're giving to you. If you choose not to accept it, that's your own risk that you take. So you might be able to approach it that way as well. So we'll just wait another minute for any other questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap this up.
Everyone will receive the deck, so we'll have that out to you by close of business today. And I guess as a plug for Inspire, if you haven't registered, there are obviously spaces to come to Vegas for our partner conference over in Vegas from July 13, 14 to about 18th. It's a really good opportunity to understand where Microsoft's at from what's happening in the next financial year and onwards. There's a big focus around security and AI this year from a partner perspective, and yeah, we'd love to have you there. So if you have any questions around that, feel free to reach out and we can let you know what's required.
Awesome, thanks Sean, and thanks everyone again for joining us. We'll wrap this one up and we'll send you guys through the slide deck and a copy of the webinar. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Ian. Thanks, Elliot. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye. Have a good day.